Alright, Elden Ring has some pretty interesting and unique type of attacks. And using the weather is nothing new to the franchise, as there have always been lightning, wind or storm attacks. But what about rain? Of course you cannot literally control the weather, but whether or not it's weather or not doesn't determine whether I can use it or not. Because what I'm talking about are attacks that contain the word rain or an equivalent term. There aren't many of those, but there are a handful. However, the most obvious rain attack that would come to mind is the Founding Rain of Stars. But that's a late game spell. And in case I will ever do a gravity themed run, I am excluding the meteorite spells. But then how can you beat Elden Ring rain only on a new character? Well, my fair weather friends, it's time to get our feet wet, because this is the Elden Ring rain only challenge. We'll pick the astrology class and then start off by doing the usual stuff, collecting all the basics like golden seeds, the crafting kit, meeting the not really waifu and the very much so waifu, the lift medallions and Radagon seal for some free passive levels. In fact, we're going to need a lot of levels in this run, but nearby is the ball farming spot that will allow us to save up some runes for a rainy day. And yeah, I know, you need to keep the ball on the camera as it falls to get the runes, so can you guys please stop telling me to look at balls? Now of course farming is tedious and there is a dark cloud hanging over us already, because we have no means of attacking yet. However, equipping Radagon seal alone is enough to allow us to wield a longbow. Because our first rain attack that can be acquired without attacking anything is a bow-specific Ash of War. In central Caelid you can find the town of Sorcery, and hidden within is a painting. If you then go back to northeast Caelid, near our Pewter Tree avatar, you can drop down, very awkwardly I may add. So don't be surprised if you drop to your death multiple times here. But once you safely make your way down, you will find the painter ghost there, and that will grant us the Rain of Arrows Ash of War. So that will be our first way of dealing damage. But is it a good way? Well, yes and no. It's good in the sense that you can hit enemies with multiple arrows at once, but the problems are, first of all, actually hitting enemies with it, especially moving ones or human-sized ones. And on top of that, it's a slow attack that leaves you completely vulnerable. And then there is the lock-on issue. If you're not locked on, the arrows will just fall straight down. So the attack can be good if it hits, with a massive emphasis on the word if, and also depending on how many arrows actually hit your target. But given that we will be relying on arrows for at least the early parts of the playthrough, we need some better ones than just the regular pointy sticks. Now in Fort Hythe you can acquire the cookbook that allows you to craft blood arrows. Moreover, in this area there are multiple blood flowers, which are the second crafting material for those arrows. A few inside of the castle, but moreover a bunch around the castle as well. Just sit at a grace and they will respawn. So those are easy to farm. What is not yet farmable, however, but we can at least acquire a whole bunch of them, are rot arrows. You can buy several butterflies to craft them, and there are a bunch of them in the swamp as well, but not an infinite amount. So you have to be careful not to waste them. Although I do have to admit that I was so stingy with them that I had about 50 remaining eventually, when I no longer needed them. Regardless, poison arrows can be bought from a merchant in the north of Caelid. Of course weaker, but infinite. And those specifically will come in handy to acquire a second rain attack. And although we are going to rely on poison damage, we might as well upgrade our bow already. So get all of the stones in Liurnia, get the bell bearing in the Seal Tunnel, yada yada, standard stuff that you will do in any playthrough basically. And then let's head to the Carrion Study Hall. And inside there is a quite annoying NPC who really loves to rain on your parade. Quite literally in fact, as one of her attacks is the very rain spell that we get from defeating her. However, she will likely completely destroy you if you try to face her head on. Now, technically you can cheese her with the elevator and make her fall down, but we have our rain of arrow attacks now, so let's see what we can do with that in combination with poison arrows. If you avoid her initially and take the second elevator up, you can get up on the chandeliers. Now, she can still hit you there because of the splash damage of her magic arrows. However, she cannot shoot straight up. And the thing is that with Rain of Arrows, we can shoot straight up and by extension straight down. Although here we encounter one of the massive downsides of this attack. The lock-on. Especially when there are multiple targets, it can be an absolute disaster. And again, if you're not locked on, the arrows will just come straight down right where you are. Which actually can sometimes have a tactical purpose as well. Now, once Miriel is poisoned, she will start teleporting around based on how much health she has. But you can use the center of the chandelier to block her magic arrows. Now our final location is the upper floor. However, there you can use the railing to block her attacks. Now, the rain of arrows skills does actually still somewhat work when you run out of FP, but then it will be a single arrow that basically just lands wherever it feels like. So the fact that I was able to finish her off with that one single arrow was quite lucky indeed, I must say. However, is the magic downpour spell that she drops any good? I mean, the benefit is that the stat requirements are low, but what about the damage output? Well, we obviously would first need to upgrade our staff, so given that we don't have the first smithing stone bell yet, let's head up into the mine. Unfortunately, the Crystallian there poses a bit of a problem. The whole gimmick of this fight is that he takes practically no damage until you break his armor, which is somewhat doable with direct arrow shots, but good luck trying to do that with rain of arrows, where most of the time you'll be lucky if even a single arrow hits him on the head. So we cannot rely on breaking him, but fortunately these guys can be poisoned. However, here we encounter the other problem of this attack. You have to sit still for a long time to attack. On top of that, the arrows will hit where the enemy was when the shot was fired. So when they move around, that's a problem. And what makes it even worse is that this enemy is small. It's a human-sized enemy. And as I said, you will be lucky if even one arrow hits the target. This is the kind of weapon art that shines against big and slow enemies. When the enemy is small and or fast, then it tends to suck a little bit of donkey dick. Fortunately, the Crystallian only needs to be poisoned twice to finish him off, I think. Oh fuck me, are you serious? That little bit of health? So yeah, that will still take multiple arrows to drain that tiny fraction of health. Yeah, the downpour spell better be worth it. So I guess it's time to test the waters against Margit. He's not mandatory for this run, but we want an extra talisman slot anyway, so he will be a decent guinea pig to test our attacks on. Or should I say porcupine, because you'll pretty much have to rely on the rain of arrows anyway, because the magic downpour doesn't live up to its name. Even after upgrading, it's a pathetic little drizzle. Fucking hell, I would probably do more damage by taking a piss. The rain of arrows is a much different story, however, especially when using bleed arrows. And although Margit has some crazy combos, and he can easily punish you with his throwing knives, making it hard to find the right opportunity for such a slow attack, but he can be somewhat passive when you're at a distance, and on top of that he's not a very small target. Which is a good thing because I finished him off as well with a single arrow because I was out of FP. Now this fight might fool you into thinking that this will be an easy and straightforward type of run. But don't judge too early, because when it rains, it pours. However, we have a new talisman slot now, and there's a talisman Caelid that increases arrow damage. And we'll have to be there anyway, because our next boss will actually be Radahn. For two reasons. First of all, my previous two runs were any %, so for this one I wanted to change the routing. So my goal this time was to reach the capital not by going past the Draconic tree Sentinel, but by using the portal down in Deeproot Depths. And yes, that is a bit unnecessarily convoluted, but when you think about it, that's kind of what my channel is all about anyway. But secondly, defeating Radahn will give us access to our third rain attack, given that he himself uses a version of Rain of Arrows as well. Now to make sure I was ready for that fight, I went and collected the butterflies in the swamp to get enough rod arrows, and then Millicent tried to rain on my parade by invading me. I actually had no idea that was even a thing. Well, I did quickly improvise a strategy that allowed me to hit her, while she wasn't able to hit me. And you actually get a nice amount of runes from her. And that's a good thing, because you definitely want to have enough vigor to be able to survive an attack from Radahn's ginormous hitboxes and chaotic attacks. Especially because you will need to sit still whenever you attack. So it's time for the Radahn Festival. Sorry, I'm not saying that correctly. The Radahn Festival! Okay, well, that part of the game at least. Of course, you first need to make sure that you go all the way around to avoid his version of Rain of Arrows. Yeah, if only that was the ability that we would gain from his weapon. But it's not nearly as spectacular as that, unfortunately. Now, you would think that Radahn would be an easy target because he's so big, but here's the problem. Given that the arrows land where the boss was when you fired your shot, even when a boss is huge, if he moves around a lot, you can still miss. Now, firing directly underneath Radahn kinda works. Strange that the arrows don't hit him while going upwards. But given how slow this attack is, you will be kind of vulnerable, especially when he does the quick attack where he slams his swords into the ground. So my strategy here was to inflict him with rot first, so that even if I don't get many opportunities to attack, he will still take damage over time. And my initial idea was to stack rot with poison. However, then you would have to switch your arrows mid-fight, since you can only have 2 types equipped at once. And my second type was bleed arrows. After all, if you can land a shot where the entire arrow rain hits him at once, you will get some really nice bleed build-up. But yeah, of course, good luck finding safe times to attack. As I said, underneath him is sort of safe-ish, and at a distance can work too, but then you have to be just outside of the reach of his swords. But not any further than that, because then he will move, or he will simply be out of reach. Now, one downside of using rot is that it's active for so long, and that sounds really weird, but given that it was still active after the meteor phase, I couldn't inflict it again. However, it also doesn't last long enough to last the entire fight. So that means I had to finish him off with bleed arrows. And the thing is that I'm not exactly very skilled at this fight. And I'm not that familiar with his moveset to begin with. Moreover, I set the rules to not use meteorites in this run, but Radahn doesn't play by those rules. Fuckalicious, that was intense. But we did brace the storm, and I think you can understand the gravity of this situation. Because not only can we go underground now, we can also use Radahn's Remembrance to get the Lion Bow, which provides us with the weapon art Radahn's Reign. Now you can also buy specific arrows associated with this weapon. However, not only are those ridiculously expensive, it's not even clear what the benefit is supposed to be. I didn't really notice any sort of significant difference in damage or range, and they also don't home in on enemies with gravity powers or something. Which would have been really helpful, but I'm not even sure what the point of these arrows are. But first I went to try out the regular great arrows on the Earthtree avatar in the Weeping Peninsula, because I wasn't getting much meaningful benefit from my Flask of Wondrous Physic yet. And given how slow my attacks are, in fact the Radahn's Reign is even slower, and this avatar drops the Shield Crystal and the Automatic Regeneration Crystal. So that is a perfect combination. Especially given that I need to sacrifice Crimson Flasks for Cerulean Flasks, so using those for healing little bits of chip damage is not recommended. Oh, and if you've seen my Holy Damage Only run, you know that the projectiles don't dissipate after a tree avatar dies. But given that I knew that already, I was able to skillfully dodge all those projectiles. Well, even though my goal was to enter the capital via the portal in Deeproot Depths, and we can access that area now, since Radahn is defeated. However, if you only have Radahn's Great Rune, you cannot use that portal. You need a second Great Rune for that. Kinda makes that portal absolutely completely useless. Because if you need 2 Great Runes anyway, you might as well go past the Draconic Tree Sentinel. I mean, it's much quicker and way more straightforward. However, we are trying to do things differently this run, so we're going for that portal anyway. However, the reason I went towards Rennala rather than Godric is because I knew I would have to respec my stats later on, when I would switch from arrows to magic. Regardless, against either her or her husband, her husband's wolf, using Rain of Arrows is quite a pain. Because when the hell would it be safe to use a slow attack like this against a fast moving enemy like the Red Wolf? In fact, how would you even safely be able to hit him, given that you automatically miss if the target moves right after firing? Well, the answer seems to be that you can't. So the most effective way is to not fire when it's safe. On the contrary, if he does either the double sword slash followed by the jump, or the charge bite attack, and you tank that bite or the first slash of that combo, then the wolf will stand still long enough for your arrows to hit. So you will take damage, but he will take more. Because when you try to fire when you can prevent taking damage, he will prevent taking damage as well by moving out of the rain. However, with a small life bar like this, that is like a black cloud above our heads, but given that he doesn't have much health either, just remember that even black clouds have a silver lining. Which is also a great album, by the way, but that has nothing to do with the video. It's true though. So after the fight we get a memory stone, which is a good thing because we will have 3 different range spells later on, all of which do magic damage. So we'll have to think about what magic related talisman can help us out by then. Well, directly above the room where we fought the wolf, we find Radagon's icon, which increases spellcasting speed. So that sounds extremely beneficial, but in all honesty, I cannot actually tell the difference. So side by side it might indeed be faster, but in any practical sense I'm not sure you would even notice it during a fight. So perhaps we can do better than that one. Behind an illusory wall, right before the Red Wolf's arena, you will find a talisman that boosts the damage of sorceries. And the good thing is that there are 2 versions of these, and unlike with most talisman, those 2 actually stack. You can equip both at once, so that will be very good for later. Well, the carrier knight in front of the elevator would definitely be a pain in the ass to hit. So we're just going to ignore him. Shame really, because his shield would be really helpful to acquire after skillfully and tactically conquering that carrier knight by completely purposely making him fall down and thereby acquire the shield that I totally planned to acquire. And it can be quite helpful during the first phase of the Rennala fight, because Rain of Arrows is obviously not that great against the magical girls because of the lock-on. Although having said that, the downpour also requires you to lock on, otherwise the projectiles will just rain down randomly. But it is definitely more convenient and you can occasionally still block some books this way. But when it comes to inflicting actual damage, I do require my arrows, but the damage is quite low. So my idea was to use rod arrows and then simply wait behind a pillar while her life slowly drains away. However, even with all these arrows raining down, not only is the build-up already quite low, but even when you're right next to her, it is a matter of RNG how many arrows actually hit her. So it took 2 cycles to get the rod going. But hey, as I said, now I could safely wait behind a pillar until she automatically drops down. Which actually makes you wonder, does she have a special death animation when she dies while inside her force field? Well, we're about to see that. And... oh, you gotta be kidding me! Really? Crapalicious. Well, at least we made it to the second phase. However, now the rod strategy is even less effective. Not only is it pretty hard to find safe opportunities to use a slow attack like this, but now she's standing upright. So, smaller target, she moves around a lot, and on top of that, her resistances actually go up in her second phase. Most of them at least, including rod. So, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get it to proc. In fact, I would have been better off using regular arrows. Well, that's not entirely true though. Because as I said, not all her resistances go up. In both phases, she has the same resistance to bleed. So bleed arrows were quite a bit more effective. At least for phase 2.1, because when the summons appear, well, not only do we need to get the fuck out of there, but now the lock-on is once more your biggest enemy. Alright, finally an opportunity. Son of a bitch! Oh, and when she goes full moon mode, she gets iframes, but when you use that same spell, you do not. Which will definitely be a pain in the ass in my moon only run. Which is interesting, I'm writing this before starting that playthrough. I'm recording it after I started it. And by the time I finish editing and uploading this video, I will be much further ahead with that run. Well, we know that time is convoluted. So given that we now have a new talisman slot, I initially went to get the blue dancer charm. However, given that we eventually would focus on magic damage, and Radahn's bow is actually really heavy, this talisman wouldn't be that beneficial. So instead I went for Lloyd's sword talisman, because at least that is applicable to all damage types. Although, given how easily we take damage in this run, that would only be beneficial sometimes. In retrospect, I should have gone for the Cerulean or Carrion talisman for either more FP or less FP consumption. Because, spoiler alert, that is going to become the biggest issue. Well, at least the next boss would certainly not be an issue, given that my goal was to reach the capital via the portal in the Deeproot Depths. However, the biggest issue of the entire playthrough would be right before that portal. Surprisingly. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because next up is a fight against ourselves. The Mimic tier. However, you can actually cheese yourself, and that way you can go fuck yourself over. But the point is that the Mimic tier mimics the way you are when you enter the arena. So if you enter with nothing, the boss will have nothing. Now that implies that I did try to give myself a fisting, but no, I can take it. It's ironic that even when I do things right, I still manage to screw myself. Although the fight did take ages because I had a hard time penetrating myself with my arrows. But eventually I made myself bleed, so after I had enough to drink, I eventually couldn't take anymore. Yeah, it's still a stupid fight. I hate myself. Fortunately, there is someone we can always rely on to love and care for us. And that is of course our other waifu, Sandra Snuggles. Daughter of a famous doctor, apparently. So I guess it's time for some hot, steamy Yuri action. Some nice, wholesome, family-friendly, PG-13 hot, steamy Yuri action. And then we are expected to hand a dagger to the D on her behalf. Why would that be the case?
She wants the dick!
Anyway, after that we went for Nokron and towards the coffin at the waterfall. Unfortunately, that is protected by 2 gargoyles, which turned out to be quite a roadblock. Because fucking hell, these guys are aggressive. In fact, even when it's one-on-one, I can hardly get an opportunity to get a shot in. And the damage is only somewhat decent if all arrows hit. But that is extremely rare. Because remember that it doesn't matter if a boss is big, if that boss is also constantly moving around. And draining 2 life bars means I require a shit ton of FP, but constantly taking damage means I require a shit ton of Crimson Flask. Yeah, this is not gonna happen. And I tried to make them fall off the waterfall, but I don't know if this either is patched, or it just requires an extreme amount of luck, but I at least wasn't able to do it. Yeah, change of plan. We need upgrade materials. After all, it is possible to get our bow all the way to +9. Because Somber Smithing Stones 8 and 9 are easily accessible in Caelid. However, number 7 is a different story. That one is located in Volcano Manor. So first let's go all the way around to activate the bridge. You know, the one leading to the Godskin What the fuck? Okay, I know that the Godskin Noble is fat, but I didn't know he extended beyond his own boss arena. Well, this is certainly weird. But anyway, the whole point is that you don't need to fight him, even though the Smithing Stone is beyond his arena. However, if you do a very awkward jump, you can reach the ledge where the stone is, if you jump from on top of the bridge. And I was told that it's best to get naked, but I'm starting to suspect that that doesn't actually have anything to do with making a jump. Still, I would recommend doing that as well. It's like how the self-destruct function in Nier Automata has a monumental tactical advantage that strictly affects gameplay in a highly practical way. So, after visiting Caelid, I had a +9 Radahn's Great Bow, without having to fight the Godskin Noble. Of course, then I made the logical decision to fight him anyway with my normal bow. Well, he is nice and plump, so perfect to make a pincushion out of. And at a distance he tends to throw fireballs, and you have just enough time to get your own attack in and then roll out of the way of that incoming fireball. And because most, if not all, arrows tend to hit this time, which is very satisfying I may add, that makes it quite easy to build up status effects. So first I poisoned him with serpent arrows, and then I switched over to bleed arrows. When he goes into second phase, he goes into Limp Bizkit mode, but you can trap him behind a pillar, or 2, I mean no way he could fit in between. God damn it, From Software! Well, he does become more aggressive in this phase, but he is taking passive damage because of the poison anyway. Moreover, you can actually hit him from behind a pillar. Well, emphasis on can, because once more, the lock-on becomes an issue. So this phase took a bit longer, but by defeating him, I got a pretty nice amount of runes. So together with an almost fully upgraded great bow, the gargoyles shouldn't pose any significant threat anymore. Yeah, damage output means very little when you can hardly ever even hit these guys. So it would have to come down to strategy. And what I came up with is what I would like to refer to as a Swiss cheese tactic. You know, a cheese tactic is meant to trivialize a fight, but a Swiss cheese tactic is something that makes a fight easier in principle, but either requires really favorable RNG, or is really difficult to execute, or can backfire in all kinds of ways. In other words, a cheese tactic with a lot of holes in it. Because you can sort of safely hide to the back of the arena, behind the rocks, and hit them from there. However, there are several problems with that. First of all, they can still hit you with a wind attack, or just attack you directly if they get too close. And especially if they use the poison puke, you're completely fucked. And when they don't try to attack you, they tend to move away, meaning they are eventually out of your reach. And of course, the lock-on is already an issue to begin with. Moreover, even when they are slow walking, that can be enough for most arrows to miss, which wastes a lot of FP. So when I finally took out the first one, I had to lure the second one towards the back. After all, I couldn't afford to miss many more shots. But yeah, as I said, Swiss cheese tactic. We basically ended up switching places. But at least the gargoyle was standing in place, meaning I could do maximum damage by just tanking his breath attacks. But well, that didn't last that long. However, I still had one cerulean flask remaining, so I thought I could just take him head on. But well, dying at this point would be one hell of a kick in the nuts. So when I ran low on health, I had little choice but to get behind the rock again. However, he was way too close, so I tried the other position all the way to the left. Well, I was in luck and I could get 2 more shots in, but now I was out of cerulean flasks. Only 5 more shots remaining. And the gargoyle was slowly moving out of reach again. So I had no choice but to re-aggro him and move back to the other side. And I had 0 flasks remaining of anything, so avoiding the wind attacks was crucial. However, the next shot hit with only a single arrow. 3 more shots remaining. And I ran out of Radahn's spears, but as I said before, there doesn't seem to be any noticeable difference between those and regular great arrows. Crapalicious, only 1 more shot remaining. Oh, thank fuck, that was over 13 minutes in total. But we made it past one of the biggest hurdles of this playthrough. So I thought, because I never could have expected what the actual biggest obstacle would be. But now we have access to the coffin that will take us down up the waterfall. Which takes us down to deep root depths, which is not deeper, but what? Well, whatever may be the case, now we have access to the alternative way to enter the royal capital. Namely, the portal located near Godwin's corpse. Oh wait, that's right, first we have to defeat Via's Simp Squad. But you know, that's one of the easiest and most forgettable fights in the game. So that should be no problem. What? Well, as I said, that should be no fuck, I missed. But whatever, this is a very easy fight. God damn it, just let me... As I said, it's not a... This is not a problem. What the hell, dude? Okay, maybe the magic downpour will actually be more beneficial. I mean, that does allow me to block with my excuse me? Okay, maybe if I simply poison it. God damn it, let me poison you! How the hell is this even a thing? I mean, I even made sure to be offline to get this specific NPC. Because when you're online, you can get several different variations. Alright, he's poisoned. Now just kite him along, and in the meantime, the regenerating crystal from my physic flask can slowly regenerate my health. Damn it, it doesn't last long enough. Do I really have to waste my rot arrows on this fight? Okay then, first one down. Next one is Sorcerer Roger. Fuck it, I'm Dutch. I just call him Rogier. Tita tovenaar Rogier, godverdomme. What the hell? That's my move. Well, alright, same strategy for this guy, and... God damn it! Let me just... Damn it, how the hell am I supposed to poison him? Fuck. Okay, then apparently it's time to use my limited yet most powerful resource, the rot arrows. Well, at least 1 proc is enough. But the problem is that getting a proc is a complete crock. Should have brought my Glock. But I guess this is a complete roadblock, because there are 3 more guys after him. What the hell? How can this be more difficult than the freaking gargoyles? Alright then, you want to play hard? Want to steal my moves? Well, then it's time for me to acquire a new rain attack. Which unfortunately requires fighting 2 Crystallians at the same time. Which sounds like a nightmare, but fortunately it's more of a nuisance than an actual threat. Because these are low level enemies that don't do a lot of damage. And although it takes quite a long time to get the poison going, the staff one at least stands still most of the time. And then you can focus on avoiding the spear one, enacting one of the old school System of a Down songs. Okay, god damn it, stop bouncing with your pogo stick. I'm going psycho groupie coking crazy here. Alright then, after that mess, we get a mass of crystal shards that rain down all around you. And while I'm in this cave anyway, I might as well pick up a better staff. Namely the crystal staff that not only upgrades with somber stones, so that's much easier to upgrade, but it will also boost the damage of a new rain spell. The intelligence requirements are really high though, but that will apply to our final rain spell later on as well, so respecking was inevitable anyway. This does mean, however, that we have a very small life bar to work with. But you know, I'm sure that our new powerful spell will make up for that. So, from the respec FOD, back to the Sim Squad. Well, the damage is good, but when you cast it, you stand there like you're waiting for the train to arrive. And if you're familiar with the NS, the Dutch rail network, then you know how long you will be waiting. Seriously, I can take a piss faster than this. And if you're familiar with my streams, my live streams, I mean, god damn it. You know, this is not going in the right direction. My point is that this is such a ridiculously slow spell that it's practically useless. I mean, the damage output doesn't matter if using it is practically a death sentence. But you know, maybe I can hide behind the portal itself. Oh fuck, that's right, this is a From Software game. Never mind. Oh, come on, what the hell is going on? Since when did Via Sim Squad become the chat platoon? I just cannot get past these guys. Well, I guess I have no other choice but to take a rain check. Otherwise I will turn into depressed continue. However, that means I will just have to get to the capital the normal way. But hey, perhaps our new crystal rain will be effective against the Draconic tree sentinel. You know, I'm starting to suspect that I made a mistake getting this spell. Well, the saying is that after rain comes sunshine. Or is that Dunglish? Well, whatever, the point is that there is a positive aspect to all of this. Because now our previously useless downpour suddenly has become a viable attack. It does also have a pretty long casting time, but nowhere nearly as long as the crystal rain. Moreover, there are two versions. It's obviously best to charge it for more damage. But whenever you feel that you won't be able to charge it in time, you can just use a regular cast for less but safer damage. Oh, little too close there at the end. But I must say, although we cannot ride on it, a little downpour has finally become a torrent. Well, that's still a bit of an exaggeration. But we can now enter the capital, and after we finish this area, we can gain the true pain train of rain. And we're going to need it because please release me of the crystal release. I don't see how this spell will ever be useful. However, with the downpour, Godfrey became quite an easy fight. However, I will go in more detail once we fight the real Godfrey later on in the run. Well, I was willing to give Crystal Release one final try. Perhaps I could use it after Morgott does a jump attack. And no, of course not. This spell makes no sense. I guess the description is very telling, since it's also called Crystal Sun. So, Violent Rain refers perhaps to the torrent of obscenity she'll release when using it? Just forget about the spell. But I didn't want to use bleed arrows again, since I already did that for Margit. So I first used his jump attacks as safe opportunities for poison arrows. And then, because downpour can be used from a distance, there were many safe opportunities to cast it. Although of course Morgott can throw daggers pretty much at any time. So that was really the only danger. Also, it's a real damn shame that his Sword of Damocles meets Gates of Babylon attack is not available for the player, because that would be one hell of a rain attack. Regardless, I was able to drain his life bar rather quickly. In fact, I wanted to reapply the poison when he gets diarrhea from it. But that wasn't even necessary, since he was obviously still feeling a bit under the weather. And during the second phase, just like when using melee attacks, the best opportunity to cast is right after you avoid either of his Bloodsword attacks. And it is rarer, but he can still do his jump attack after a spear throw. In fact, even when he does the spear charge, As long as you move away from him after rolling through it, you still get a casting opportunity. Well, after his defeat, I at least found one final usage for Crystal Release. Speaking of release and the fact that I usually sit on his face afterwards, especially because of the trouble he gave me on my first playthrough, I think a different type of shower would have been applicable. But let's not go there, this channel is known for respectful, family-friendly content. And of course there's a very lovely lady present, so we have to be on our best behavior. Alright, so now it's time for that dumb bitch to go burn herself. But of course, our first priority is to pick up our best and most rainy rain attack. So, across the invisible bridge to Yorskat's tower, and at the very top we find the founding rain of stars. Ironically, this is what you would call an actual downpour.
Raindrops are falling on my head.
Now, it is a very localized rainstorm, so fast moving enemies can still be a problem, but there are ways to get some really good damage out of this. Especially if we acquire another magic boosting talisman and some very handy free levels. Well, when recording this, patch 1.04 dropped, and as you probably know, From Software tried but failed to fix the snowfield skip by adding a death cam. However, it was still possible to avoid it. So in the new patch they extended the automatic kill zone. But that's still not enough. Because there are still ways around it. You can jump off to the very right of that area, or you can go from Castle Sol, up the first cliff, and then jump as late as possible, and the moment the death cam activates, do the double jump. If you do this correctly, you can avoid the automatic kill zone and activate the Stake of Marika down below. Now I'm sure that this will once again change in patch 1.05. However, then we still have the option to fast travel to the snowfield by waiting in the back of the truck while having Cardboard Box C equipped. Wait, what? Anyway, now it's time to gain a massive amount of runes, which in principle could be done anywhere, but that would take a lot of time. Moreover, I wanted to know if they also try to fix the second version of the Moog cheese in this patch. However, in order to get there, we need to kill the invading NPC in order to activate the portal. And that is a bit of an issue with this build. Well, I did say that I wouldn't use the meteorite gravity spells, but that doesn't mean that I cannot use gravity itself to spell out LOL, go F yourself, to our little invader.
Gravity, you fucking retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Gravity!
Alright, so the gravestones had been moved in the previous patch, meaning that jumping upon the wall was no longer possible. Yet the alternative method, using Moog's shackle 3 times in front of the fork wall to freeze his AI, evidently still works. As long as you don't break his posture, his AI will remain broken until the end. However, then, when almost finishing the script, I suddenly realized something. Something I completely overlooked. Not surprisingly, because it does not contain the word rain, so it may not follow the rules of the run, but given that the special effect of Moog's spear causes it to rain blood upon you, it would have been such a missed opportunity to not include it. So you guys, I think you know what time it is. Okay, I think you get the idea. So, good thing I left Godric alive, so I could still include this after the fact. But anyway, back to where we were. There's one more thing to do in the snowfield, however, that will require a little trip back to Lucaria. Because the merchant there sells the Imp Spirit Ashes, and if you use that in front of the sealed tower in the snowfield, you can acquire the Graven Mass Talisman that boosts damage from sorceries, And remember that it stacks with the Graven School Talisman that we picked up back in the academy. So, after me crying about not being able to wash away the Sims, it's time we really bring the waterworks. And this time, when they experienced the flooding force of my dazzling deluge, they were the ones ending up wetting themselves. Heck, I even forgot to go offline to get the standard version of the first NPC, but it didn't even matter. And when I finally had to face the trio, only Big Fat Logan was able to put up some sort of resistance by trying to outspam me. But eventually, I got it through his thick skulls that even though he's a big boy, he's still wet behind his ears. And I must say that I never thought I would say it about this boss in particular, but when I saw the words great enemy appear, I felt that. Oh, I did it! I finally managed to beat one of the easiest and most forgettable boss fights in the game. Oh, if that doesn't make me a super mega ultra badass balls to the wall hardcore motherfucker, then I don't know what will. And now we can finally access the portal and make our way to the capital in order to fuck, why are we here again? Huh. I feel like someone just threw a wet blanket upon my plans. Oh wait, that's not entirely true, because we can still finish Mrs. Snuggles' questline in order to fight the Lichdragon. And D looks a little tuckered out. I mean, Mr. Snuggles, I know D likes it rough, but you have to remember that he's also really sensitive. However, if we want to fight the Lichdragon, we will need the curse mark of death from Ranni's real body. So I try to be smart and get the Fingerslaying Blade in advance because I already have access to Nokron. However, then I got this message. God damn it, first the game emphasizes how maidenless I am, and now it says that I'm destined to not handle any chess. This game really isn't that great for your self-esteem, I'd say. Well, at least this means that we can go towards Ultra Waifu. However, that also means we have to get past a magic-resistant boss, namely Loretta. She is a low-level boss, however, so the damage wasn't terrible. But she definitely moves around too much for the Founding Rain of Stars. So then I switched to the fucking crystal release. God damn it, why do I even have that one still equipped? It's the downpour spell, of course, that I wanted. And that definitely worked a lot better, since it does home in on her. Although in retrospect, it might have been helpful if I brought a parry shield, given that that would temporarily lock her in place. But it should be fine as long as she doesn't endlessly spam magic projectiles. Hey. God damn it, do you ever stop? Royal Knight? Royal pain in the ass. Yay, Ultra Waifu. Well, actually we aren't only here for the curse mark, we are also here for a battle talisman that you can get from doing Sullivan's questline. Remember that I'm still using Lloyd's sword ring, and since I'm rarely at full health, the magic scorpion charm would be a better choice. Also, now I have finally permission to fondle the chest. And afterwards I got the upside downer for the tower. And for some reason Miriel is back here, but you can just ignore her and make your way down to the top of the tower. And for some reason there's a Godskin noble along the way as a regular enemy. Exception to the rule, of course, because other than him this game only has unique bosses constantly. But at least this allowed me to test out the effectiveness of our Founding Rain spell. Usually fat guys get wet from sweat, but now he croaked from being soaked. Or something, I don't know. But this was actually a really good sign for the inevitable and mandatory encounter later on in the game. So, then I acquired the curse mark of death from the real Ranni. And I must say she made the right decision. I mean, I know she's a doll now and that might be a little uncomfortable to cuddle with. But of course we still have Fia to snuggle with. Well, for the Lichdragon, I should say that I had an approach rather than a strategy in mind. Because to be honest, I have no idea what his actual moveset is. Because I only fought him once before in my blind playthrough. And back then all I saw was lightning and his ankles. As the camera is not your friend when you are underneath him. So this time I had the option to not be underneath him. So I first used Rain of Arrows to inflict him with poison. And then cover him with rain in order to hang him out to dry, ironically. Shame that it's not literally water, because that should have been quite effective against an electric dragon. Regardless, it was effective since this boss doesn't move around all that much. So I could basically go into cast and then move away so I could actually be able to see what the fuck he's doing. And I'm still not the biggest fan of the lighting gimmick, but it's much less of a pain if you don't also have to be struggling with the camera at the same time. In general, I must say that being able to fight this boss without attacking his ankles made me appreciate him a bit more. because I did not like this fight in my blind playthrough. Regardless, we should at least agree that this fight looks awesome. Especially that this time I could actually, you know, see it. Well, Fia snuggles no more. But at least we finally have some new fashion to wear. Alright, with that done, it's time to return to the mountains and take on the fire giant. Now you would think that rain versus fire would work very well. And I did want to ask him how the weather's up there. But yeah, he's so big that he doesn't have his head in the clouds, but above the... Well, actually, even his freaking balls are above the cloud. And even though I'm trying to attack his ankle, nothing I have would be effective at hitting it. And especially not breaking it. So instead, I went for bleed damage. After all, that is percentage based. And I had some poison arrows ready for the second phase. Because for some reason when he gets to the second phase, even though he doesn't have a lot of health left, it feels nearly impossible to drain the remainder of his... Oh my god, seriously? I died while getting him into the second phase. Well, it still means I'm dead. So after the cutscene, all that means is that I am dead and he is... Wait, what? What the actual fuck? What the hell happened? Well, I had to look up what just happened, because as I said before, this was the day that patch 1.04 came out. And, well, it's pretty obvious why they had to immediately repatch it again. When you think about it, this would have been the perfect opportunity to shit all over the Godskin Duo. Perfect cheese tactic. But you know, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. And you know what, for these guys I'm not even going to bother with a rain-themed song. Let's just fucking annihilate these fuckers. I'm ringing in the rain, I'm ringing in the rain. Yeah, of course, right after that we encounter something even worse. Namely, a flock of birds raining down upon us. Yeah, bird is the word. It's trash, man. But you know, given that we have the final upgrade stone we need, I was thinking that the crystal staff wasn't the best choice to begin with. I mean, I'm not even using the only crystal spell that I have. So I went and get the Carian scepter. And yeah, I know it specifically boosts moon spells, but there aren't any rain-specific staffs in the game. And this one has really high scaling. And yes, I am aware that there is magic boosting attire, but I'm not cosplaying as Burger King, nor am I going to wear a stupid banana on my head. So I am sticking to the staff. So, let's try it out on one of the most visually impressive fights in this game. No, not Maliketh, definitely a contender as well. But I'm talking about Dragonlord Dragonlord Placenta. Well, rain versus lightning and fire sounds pretty effective in and of itself. Although you have to take the slow casting in account because of the lightning strikes. Regardless, this is a huge boss that at least initially doesn't move around that much. Which is perfect for the Founding Rain of Stars spell. Actually, he is so big that it's hard to even get the cloud directly above him, even when you're pressed up against him. And whenever he forces you to move away from him, you can use magic downpour instead. Unless of course you have to move very far away when he's using his nuclear lightning strike. But magic downpour has another benefit, although I did actually mess it up here. Because remember that this spell fires its projectiles randomly around when you're not locked on. But in principle, when he starts disappearing and reappearing, you can actually safely stay out of his reach and use downpour to get hits in. But again, only if you time it correctly, so you can lock onto the boss. Second half of the fight isn't that different from the first half. However, there is one crucial difference of course, and that is his Meteor laser barrage. So better make sure you run away as far as possible. Then only the final two lasers could potentially hit you. So just look at what your angle is in regards to his position, because he more or less fires those final lasers straight forward. But he doesn't aim directly at you. Alright, time for Maliketh. And wow, I did not expect that stacking Founding Rain and Downpour would do that much damage to him. Although I was pretty lucky that he stayed right underneath the cloud. However, then the casting time would be an obvious problem, especially because of his quick bestial sling attack. So I tried to use a pillar for cover, well, which does help as cover, but I think you understand by now what the problem with that would be. Obviously the lock-on. However, the damage output made up for it though. For a second phase I decided to rely on Downpour exclusively, since he goes full anime mode then, so he doesn't tend to stay in place long enough for Founding Rain of Stars. Now, there is one thing about this fight I need to vent a little about. Because even though this is one of my favorite fights in the game, I can't only shower it with praise. Because there is an issue I have with his multi-slash attack. You know, the weapon art of his weapon. Not the attack itself, but you would think that it has two variations. One after the combo with the slow overhead, and the other one after the jump attack followed by the spin flip. And that first combo doesn't necessarily have that multi-slash attack, and that is okay. But here's how From Software messed it up. Sometimes he can arbitrarily cancel that attack, but then somehow continue it anyway. I cannot even name any other From Software boss that can do that. And let's be honest, that makes no sense. But it's worse than that. Sometimes, fortunately rather rare, he can do the multi-slashes completely out of nowhere. Not part of a combo, not after that spinning jump, just randomly for no reason whatsoever. And I think that's just so typical and so disappointing when you have such a great design, but there just has to be this little one nonsensical flaw in it. And it doesn't matter that there are ways of dealing with it, the point is that it serves like a little shit cherry on top of what otherwise would have been a delicious sundae. It's a bit like how in Bloodborne they gave Lady Maria an instant hitbox when she transforms her weapons in her first form. Which isn't even an attack in the first place, but still has an hitbox for no reason whatsoever. I don't know, it just always seems that the greatest fights in these games just have to have this little bad design decision. And in a way that's much more annoying than when a fight is just bad to begin with, like Auto Omniscient here. Because that's just a fight that's only good on paper. I mean, the idea is quite good, that he knows the spells of the bosses that you have defeated and whatnot. But in practice, it's an annoying spam fest. Either you can stunlock him to death, or it just turns into a giant light show. Well, I guess it's at least pretty though. Fortunately, after that, we go back to one of the better boss fights in the game. Namely, the real version of Godfrey. Well, for Founding Rain, there was definitely RNG involved, because Godfrey really enjoys dashing away to do a stomp attack. But when the rain hits, damn does it do damage. But of course, I mainly had to rely on Downpour. And unfortunately, more often than not, you don't get the opportunity to charge it. But you know, it's okay to do a little less damage if it's safe damage. And that's especially true of the second phase. In fact, even uncharged, it really depends on what the boss chooses to follow up with, whether you will get kicked in the face or not. However, just like in my bot only run, you can attack while he screams, but unlike in that run, when he rips the entire arena apart, that suddenly becomes an attack opportunity as well. Unfortunately, I have a tendency to just kinda suck, and I mistimed some rather easy to avoid attacks. And then I had a total brain fart when I literally jumped into his kick. And that was, well, almost the final drop in the bucket.
Tarnished. Thy strength befits a crown.
Now, this wasn't an all remembrances run, but I was curious to see if this build would be at least somewhat viable against Rykard. You know, without using the Serpent Ruler. But the problem here was not damage output, or even the damage that I would take from the lava, which was minimal. The problem was that the lava would stagger me out of my casting animation. So I couldn't even make it rain to begin with. Maybe I should have kept some of Fia's snuggle blessings. But you know, I think people would be more interested in seeing me take on... damn, what the fuck is her name again? Victoria Valkyrie or something? I don't remember. I mean, I know her name appears at the bottom of the screen when you fight her. But it would have been helpful if she would mention her name once or twice or so. So let's just go with Vicky Valkyrie, Sword of Cocoon Boy or whatever. Now, as much trouble as she can be, actually getting there is already a pain. But there is an unintended shortcut. If you fall down the elevator, even though you automatically die from the death barrier, even though you disintegrate before hitting the switch, you can actually activate it if you land precisely in the middle. It will probably take a few tries, but this way you have direct access to god damn it, what's her name? Malenia, that's it. That's her name, of course. Malenia. How could I forget? Such a distinct name from any other character in the game. And I know she hits hard, but our rain projectiles don't hit like wet noodles either. So, time to introduce ourselves. Well, I'm definitely not done with her, but you know what? We'll return to what's her name after defeating the final boss. I mean, that should be much easier, right? Yeah, not exactly. Well, at least during Radagon's first phase he's relatively passive and you can stack some nice damage by combining Founding Rain and Downpour. But when he gets into his second phase, he becomes much more aggressive. And with these slow casting times, you're even more likely to take damage than usual. And because you need so much FP to get through both him and the Elden Beast, you cannot hold that many healing flasks. Well, actually, even when it comes to FP, I already got into trouble, because given how much the Elden Beast moves around, the amount of damage that you will do with each cast is very RNG dependent. So when I ran low, I had to play it safe and only cast when the chance of missing was low. However, the fight took so long this way that he did the Elden Stars attack twice. And yeah, you can only use your Flask of Wondrous Physic once. Yeah, that was quite painful. So I decided to roam around the world collecting all the golden seeds necessary to get the maximum amount of flasks, so that I would have 2 extra cerulean ones. However, as I said, the amount of damage you can inflict with these spells is very RNG heavy. So in the most ironic of ironies, I think you can guess how many cerulean flasks I had left at the end of the fight. Well, we're not done yet. We have unfinished business with Vicky. And even though going through that fight is like going through hell, you know what they say? It's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And interestingly, when it comes to her first phase, this build is actually quite effective against her, because she has a tendency to just walk slowly towards you, menacingly. Maybe she's one of those people who believe that you get less wet when you walk through the rain instead of running. Although it is very RNG dependent whether she will start dashing around. But because the rain covers a large area, that means you can still get quite a bit of damage in. And another benefit is that you are already at a distance when she does the waterfall dance. Ironically, it does seem that casting triggers her to do that attack much more often. At least in her first phase. However, when she gets into her second phase, things become much more difficult. Because she is way more aggressive now, and she has several attacks that cover a lot of distance, including summoning spirit versions of herself. And I was stupid enough to not reallocate my flasks. So when you do less damage, and she has such a large amount of health, FP consumption becomes an issue. But I thought that this amount of FP would be sufficient to finish her. Well, let's see if that hypothesis holds water. Wow, now that was quite literally the final drop in the bucket. But that is how you can beat Elden Ring with only rain. So it's time for me to take a celebration piss. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like and a comment. And if you want to see more of me, then consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you want early access, then you can support the channel on Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.